Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to a bonus episode of Harpin On Rugby. It's in our series of opposition view pods where we get a look from the other side of the fence before an upcoming match for Leinster or Ireland. And what's upcoming right now, of course, is the two-match series between the back-to-back world champion South Africa and the back-to-back Six Nations champion Ireland. Joining me to harp on things from a Springbok perspective is one of the top contributors to the online discourse on rugby from that part of the world. He's often heard on the excellent Rugby Bits podcast, and he is here earning a second Harpin cap. A warm welcome to Mr. Thala Msutu. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for the invitation. I realized the last time I came on, Ireland won, so maybe I'm a good luck charm for Ireland then.
That's it. Case. You never know. You never know. I'll definitely make a note of that. Now, listen, like you say, we had you on pretty much exactly this time last year, and I think it's safe to say quite a bit has happened for South African rugby over the past 12 months. Just before we start, let me take this opportunity to offer you belated congrats for that amazing triumph in France. It must have been a great time.
Yeah. I think the World Cup itself was obviously very thrilling, and it was the most competitive World Cup ever. I think there's a very easy case for any of South Africa, New Zealand, Ireland, or France, not just saying it because I'm here, winning the World Cup at the end. And obviously South Africa won all three of their knockout matches by a point. So it was very stressful. And I learned that I don't like watching rugby matches like that in public. That should be done at the privacy of your home.
Yes.
But no, it was a fantastic World Cup to win in that sense that, you are top of the sort of this top of the top sides. But yeah, I think the margins between winning and losing were literally, a small matter of centimeters. So I think, and probably building into sort of the conversation about the test series coming up, I think there's an acknowledgement from the Springboks and all of the talk that they're having that this matters to them a lot because they know that this is a very worthy, if not an opponent to be feared in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely been a lot of that, all right. But of course, a lot of rugby has happened since then. And just before we get to the test series, I thought I'd ask you maybe just to give us a sense of the general attitude down there to the URC and all that new competitions for the teams down there after 3 seasons. From here, it does look like the public are buying into it.
Yeah, I think largely, yes. I think that's the buy-in has been there. It's very much, it's slowly but surely becoming part of like the normal rugby sort of discourse and people understanding the difference between URC and the European competitions and the on and off weeks. And yeah, of course, as you saw, it was my turn for my Bulls to actually host the URC final, which was awesome. But obviously, unfortunately, we didn't win it. So it helps that there's success in the competition. We had to wait until about 15 years into Super Rugby for a South African team to win. So that's obviously automatic buy-in.
Yeah.
And it's been a very strong, the competition has been the margins between the top 8 sides were quite small. The top 4 sides, especially that were in the semi-final, I think it was pretty much, Glasgow just had a hot run and everything. But I think there is buy-in. Look, the unfortunate thing is that we host all of our or most of the matches in these big 50,000 seater stadiums. So it always looks bad on TV that there's maybe 10,000 people, which is, close to capacity for a lot of the stadiums and that are used in Europe. So it does look bad from that sense. And I think there's still some misunderstanding and not quite getting sort of the point and the significance of the Champions Cup and of the Challenge Cup, which means that the support for that is lower. Yeah, and it's just one thing that South Africa cannot defeat, and I think we can defeat many things in rugby, but we can't defeat geography. So there's always going to be a situation like with the Bulls that they don't travel for the quarterfinal game. Union still trying to sort out the traveling arrangements, and obviously that doesn't really help with understanding that this competition is very important. But I think in general it has been welcomed and accepted. But yeah, I think there's just obviously a few mechanical things that need to be sorted out, I think, in the next 2 or 3 years. So we've gotten it. I think we passed the stage of we've launched a product, people are liking it, to now it being a sort of a strong household name I think travel to be sorted out as far as possible. I'm sure I have friends from all over Europe to say that we need to fix the structure of the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup to hopefully it being more like what it was in the early stages, and having it be strength versus strength, and it be, yeah, hopefully to eliminate as quick as possible the teams that are not there to try and win it. And yeah, I think from there it can help these things. And I mean, if the finals always in South Africa, that's always a big positive as well. But yeah, I think so far so good.
Yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a very kind of brave venture to take on when you consider it, expanding into South Africa. But it was the benefits of it working were always going to sort of outweigh the risks. Once and you just have to let the rugby play out and let the competitions play themselves out and see how they go. And I think it's like you say, it has been there has been a lot of excitement and the fine margins between the teams. We had some fans from the other three provinces around Ireland on a pod recently, and a Connacht fan was saying how he could pinpoint one or two games where if they just gotten one extra try at the end, they would have been in the top eight, and that's how fine the margins were. And just to see it so close like that, it is good to see. But like you say, it does help having the success as well. The Stormers and the Bulls being the first final certainly didn't hurt. But there's sort of extra little rivalries starting to form as well between the teams and between teams from different nations, and of course. So, but you're right about the calendar. I've always been talking about the way the calendar is structured, the way the Champions Cup is structured and stuff. They do need to sort that out. It takes a bit of getting used to for the South Africans, but hopefully they'll be able to sort that out in the future. So there's definitely a lot to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, if I can add also, I think Munster last year's final with Munster coming over and winning, and their fans coming in strong numbers. I think that really established the URC. That I mean, the first final being in South Africa was great for South Africa, but I think that brought the URC together. That an away team can believe they can win a cross-continental knockout game, and also seeing the fans, the interaction with the fans. Like I went to that game because I'm actually based in Cape Town, even though I'm not a Stormers fan. So I guess, slightly happy that the Stormers lost, but it was great also seeing just a few thousand Munster fans, talking to them, finding out how they came over, them enjoying South Africa. Yeah, that made me feel like, okay, this is awesome, because that really happened with Super Rugby, because I mean, traveling to Australia, New Zealand, or Argentina was just close to impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it has definitely worked. It's great to see those numbers traveling. Okay, so let's crack on with these upcoming tests. I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth in the press about this series, and possibly with the help of the URC, there seems to be quite the rivalry developing between these two test nations. I certainly get the sense that despite those back-to-back World Cups, the Springboks really want to make a statement in this series.
Yeah, I guess it's I don't know if it's like, I guess you can say it's a bit of a South African mentality of, always feeling like you have to prove yourself, especially on the world stage, and get the recognition or the acceptance of others. And yeah, I guess there's a few things. One, Ireland has been winning against South Africa, haven't lost against South Africa for the last 8 years. Two, the last time Ireland was here in South Africa, they should have won that test series. I think we were very lucky to escape with 2-1. I think it could have easily been 3-0 to Ireland. Three, obviously the World Cup game where Ireland won by the skin of their teeth, and obviously the back and forth in the press as well. You add their Rassie's relationship with Ireland, you add the whole zombie versus Rassie thing, whatever you want to call it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of ingredients to the stew, but it's quite clear, from at least from what the team is saying, they take it almost personally that they haven't beaten Ireland, and they want to send a message, and they understand that Ireland has been probably the best team of the last 3 or so years. They've been the most consistent. Andy Farrell has over 80% winning record. They obviously won a Grand Slam. They could have won it this year as well. And yeah, they were basically Geordie Barrett's thigh away from making the World Cup final, probably. So yeah, I think there is and there's a respect I think that I think the Springbok team at least has for Ireland, and there's a rivalry. It's the funny thing is that it's been relatively one-sided, at least in the press for now, that it's basically only the South African rugby team and the media that's been saying things, and so far at least the Irish team hasn't really sent any bobs in return.
Yeah, I know. I saw the official Springboks promo. Actually, I only just saw it there before we came on, and I tried to get the sense of like how they're trying to promote it. And I suppose when you think of it, it's like, okay, we've just won our second World Cup. I mean, we're that successful. How do we sell this series? And it's like they found an angle, and it wasn't really hard to find, I suppose, because it's kind of an itch that needs scratching, because there has been these Ireland have had, like you say, these narrow wins in recent times. So it was a good way of putting it together. You know what I mean? I mean, I like that stuff, to a point, when it doesn't get crazy ridiculous, but it's been interesting to see the build up to it. And like you say, there hasn't been a whole lot the other way. It's been just a case of just sort of plowing on and getting on with what we're doing. And I think that's, it's interesting to see the two approaches to it, I suppose. They're two different styles of management as well, from Razzie and Andy.
Yeah, look, I think it's I admire how Andy Farrell played it last year in the World Cup. That Rassie was trying to almost get a rise from Ireland. He made the comment about, it's all about the World Cup. Ireland hasn't even got past the quarterfinal. He had the 7-1 bench, and Andy Farrell played it with a straight bat, effectively. He just was like, look, we're going to continue to do what we do. And yeah, I think that's the quality of Andy Farrell. Maybe something you can criticize about him as well is, what you're going to get from Andy Farrell, what you can get from Ireland. They're going to bat at a very high level. It's up to the opponent to reach that level and to overcome them. And it's not been easy. I mean, there's literally been only a few teams that have beaten them in the last 2 or 3 years. So that's been, that I think I've admired that part of it. And it's crazy because I don't think the Springboks had that promo video that you talked about. I don't think the series needs too much hyping. I guess
Mm.
on Twitter, because of, at least on social media, because of the results, the URC stuff, there's obviously been a lot more interaction between Ireland and South Africa. And I guess they see them, I guess, obviously we don't have that sort of 12-month interaction with New Zealand, Australia anymore. So I guess Ireland is coming into that space now and replacing them. But yeah, I think since we saw that this was going to be the test series, I think even this was announced, I think, before the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Since we saw this was going to be the test series, we knew that this was going to be basically two of the top teams in the world. One of them hopefully would have a World Cup with them. And there hasn't been a need for hype. I think there's been I've been asked by a few people on Twitter from the Irish side if there's like, if this is sort of a ploy to sell tickets. And it's like, no, the tickets were sold out quite quickly.
I was about to say, you talked about the URC tickets and those games not selling, but these games weren't a problem.
No, not at all. And I mean, there's a premium for these tickets. I mean, the URC tickets, they're quite cheap. This one has been at quite a cost. Like, tickets have been sold out, like the promos there, everyone understands what the stakes are. I think for the South African fans' perspective, there's a desire to very much put one over Ireland, to try and close this debate as far as they can, to go, look, yes, Ireland's had the box number for the last few years, but they're still the better side, at least at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is what you want in sports. You want these contests. You want the best teams going at it, and you want a bit of that off the field stuff. I think the Irish. You say there wasn't much pushback from the Irish. I think from our point of view, we're more annoyed with one particular show off the ball. It's more of our attention has been directed to them. It's like, what did you say that for, kind of thing. But no, listen, that's all part and parcel, I suppose. But listen, let's maybe move on to the Springbok team itself. We're recording this on a Tuesday evening, and the 23 was named earlier today. It's early in the week. That's classic Razzie move there. Put the team out there as early as possible. And I make it an average of, I don't know, just the 64 caps across the starting 15. It looks like they're really going for it.
Yeah, look, this is essentially the best team that the Springboks could have picked. Obviously, with the players available, if there was nothing else with the Wolf words and everything, this is a clear indication of how important this test is. Yeah, because this is the first year post World Cup. There's going to be probably some experimentation down the line, but yeah, this is definitely a priority series to win. Yeah, no real surprises apart from maybe picking Kwagga Smith at 8 instead of Evan Roos. I think the it's quite clear with Smith and Van Staden on the bench that a big focus will be on the Irish ruck and slowing down the Irish ball and also just making sure that you can secure your own ball as well. Because I was actually looking at the stats from the World Cup game, and I mean Ireland has probably the best. I mean, we know the attacking rack is great. It's so fast. Like they get such quick ball. That's the almost the key to their attack. But defensively, they have such a strong rack as well. And we know how good Tyke Burn is at generating turnovers. Caelan Doris is at being a nuisance. Joe McCarthy, Josh van der Fleer. So I think there's a big focus from the Springboks in making sure that there's the ball is secured from their side because Ireland, I think in the test match in the World Cup, South Africa conceded 8 turnovers and Ireland only conceded 2 or 3. So that's I think a big turning point. And look, I think Kwagga and Marco van Staden are going to try to equal those numbers and increase the turnovers generated by South Africa. But I think there will be a big focus on making sure you get to the ball as quick as possible and securing it. And then the 6-2 bench, obviously, that's now standard for South Africa and for most international sides now. Yeah, I think obviously it shows that there will be a physical approach, and I guess for me how I see it is you could see the South Africa maybe going 2 ways. The less likely is almost trying to run Ireland off their feet in altitude, but I think a big disadvantage is actually Leinster coming over for the URC semi-final, because if this was the likes of Dan Sheehan and Caelan Doris's first match at altitude, as we saw with the URC semi-final, it's easy to now go and to basically put them under pressure by putting their lungs on fire. But as we saw with Glasgow, I think it was Matt Ferguson that said basically that the fact that Glasgow came a month earlier for the URC round robin game in Pretoria helped them a lot with adjusting to altitude. So there's a good chance that, especially the Leinster Island players, that they will be actually much more suited and ready to adjust to altitude. So running Ireland off their feet, I don't think it will be as sure of a plan as it would have been if Leicester didn't come over. So I think the second option will be we'll see a more classical Springbok, knockout rugby type of game. So obviously very physical, big emphasis on set piece, big emphasis on just sort of grinding the opponent down. And basically just asking the question of Ireland that, look, these are the last 2 games of your season. Are you willing to put your body on the line, make the sacrifices that are needed in order to win the test match? And yeah, I think the Pretoria test match is arguably the best chance for Ireland to win. I mean, it's obviously going to be quite difficult to do it the second week, even though South Africa doesn't really do well in Durban usually in their test matches. But so I think for the Springboks, the best thing to do is to try and get into a fast start, get into a hard start, and just make sure that Ireland knows that this is going to be an attritional battle. And we know, look, Ireland did definitely stood up to that in the World Cup, and they handled it in that game in the Stade de France. So I don't think it's an issue of I mean I definitely don't fall into the category of people that think Ireland can't handle the physical stuff. So it's if Ireland is able to play at their best, this will be a great test match. But I do see the first test being a particular arm wrestle between the two sides.
Absolutely, and I mean, the only thing I'd wonder about that is, I mean, you can't fault the amount of caps in that starting lineup in particular. But I notice now, South African teams, a lot of times you're bringing players together from different leagues. You often have a lot of players playing in top 14 and England, whatever. But now you have a lot of them. I think I counted 7 that are currently in Japan League One. And I suppose that could be a hindrance and a help in that it's like it's maybe not the highest overall standard of the league compared to the top European leagues, whatever. But that can often help as well. That can often help get them ready, and they no problem putting on the green jersey for Test rugby and getting up for the game. But it's a question of bringing them back all together and hitting the ground running.
No, that's a very good point. And even in the test against Wales, with the Springboks played 2 weeks ago, I think there was, so the likes of Malcolm Marx, obviously he was coming back from injury, but Kwagga Smith he conceded a lot more penalties than he usually would in that game. So you could see that the Japanese-based players, that it does take them maybe a test or two to get back into the speed of things. Look, as we saw at the World Cup, there isn't a problem with them getting to their high levels of performance. It's just maybe that, coming from the top 14 versus coming from the Japanese top league, that's two different things. So, yeah, I think it will be obviously the Wales game, with all due respect, it's definitely a level below what we're going to expect from the Irish game. So, yeah, it'll be a test for them because the likes of Smith, Damien Dialendi, JC Creel, they'll be asked to play 80 tough minutes. And yeah, the question will be, are they able to? Can they get through it? Because we saw even with last year, in the preparations for the World Cup last year, there was we played the All Blacks in New Zealand, and the All Blacks absolutely blew us away. And there was a big discourse in South Africa about whether the Japanese-based players are almost hindering the Springboks more than helping them and slowing everything down. And obviously that went away during the World Cup. So yeah, I think that's a very good point. And also, the Springbok bench isn't as experienced as it could be. There isn't Steven Kitshoff or Damian Willems, even someone like Kobus Reinach. He just wasn't selected, but others are injured. And that does, put the likes of, Gerald Steenkamp, who only has a cap or two, and Sasha Ngomazulu only has a cap or two. Even Grant Williams, I don't think he's reached 10 caps yet. So those players are going to be asked to put in a big shift, especially it is a first test. It's likely that players won't necessarily be able to play the full 80 minutes. And yeah, it's a more inexperienced bench than we would usually have. But it seems like the players out for both sides are more or less equal. The Boks don't have Willems, but Ireland doesn't have Hugo Keenan. The Boks don't have Jean Klein or Lua Diacha, but Ireland doesn't have Jack Conan or Ian Henderson. So it's more or less equal in terms of unavailability. So I think Ireland will also have maybe one or two players that are going to be less experienced on their bench too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really well set up. I mean, it's you're not talking about a case of it's a couple of tests for South Africa to get ready for the rugby championship. I mean, this is a kind of a rugby championships in its own right. And you answered my next question. I was going to ask you what you thought of the bench, but you thankfully you went over that for me. It's some interesting names there, and be interesting to see what kind of impact they can bring. But no, listen, it's a lot to look forward to. But listen, we're going to leave it there, Thala. Thanks, many thanks for joining us. Here's a cracking series over the next couple of weeks, and best of luck to the Springboks for the Rugby Championship down the line. And we look forward as well to the next URC campaign. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, and all the best to Ireland as well. I think this will be a really if it's. I mean, the hype has been ridiculous, but I think the two teams are absolutely quality. So I expect this to be a top quality series. And I mean, I think I'm leaning towards it almost ending 1-1 and both sets of fans being slightly frustrated about that, which would be quite funny.
That's absolutely right, and that's kind of, it's almost a state of being that we almost enjoy in a sort of a wicked kind of a way. Just they're always having something to moan about. It's part of the, especially for us who like to chat online. But listen, that's brilliant. Thanks very much, sir. And that's it for now. For an Irish overview of the series, we've already had an all provincial panel. If you go back one in our feed, be sure to check that out. Then on Friday we'll have a preview of the first test, looking in detail at the Irish Matchday squad. As ever, stay tuned to harpinonrugby.com and all our social media channels to keep up with our content, and be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as the mood takes you. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.